politics with a big P and politics with a small p of privacy. I only have a few minutes to talk about this, and you will see that there's a slightly tongue-in-cheek new version of the GCHQ logo up the top, which may give you a bit of an insight into where I'm coming from over this. We live in a democratic society.
Always a good start.
We live in a society which has democratic processes then. And of late, thanks to Edward Snowden and others, we have discovered that agents of the state have been carrying out a variety of actions which I regard as rather questionable in terms of the principles of motivation and the need for them. And this has a really big effect on us because everybody here uses the internet. We are connected. We are a connected world. If you think back 15 to 20 years ago, prior to the internet, there is so much more about ourselves that is now online, out in the open, and available to different groups of people. So if we bank on the internet, if we go on Facebook and say LinkedIn, there's a part of us out there. And those are kind of voluntarily surrendered. And yet things that we might want to keep private, whether it's emailing our friends about the latest fluffy kitten movies, or engaging in some slightly more risque habits on chat roulette, or the latest is Yahoo, which has been scooped up. People have been watching us and endeavouring to do so, and trying very hard, and often succeeding, to overcome the security that we've been using. I'm not going to be talking specifically about these guys today because I'm going to take a more general look at the motivation and the psychology behind authoritarianism and the sort of behaviour within organisations that steps beyond our what we might call acceptable and accountable. So, does life imitate art, or is it the other way around? And this was a favourite movie of mine some years ago, and I kind of took it as read, but this is more recent. Sir David Varney was, well, I think he was once the head of British Gas. He went on to be a permanent Under Secretary. He's now got other roles. I think he's might be chair of a NHS trust somewhere. And he said this in relation to transformational government, the New Labour project to digitise everything, to put everything online, etc. And it is, the state will know a deeper truth about the citizen based on their behaviour, experience, beliefs, needs and desires. And that is basically you and I and the government assuming the right without sufficient debate, I would argue, and without recourse to any sort of real democratic process, that insights into our personal lives, our health records, etc., should be joined up and available to state agencies. And you might have seen that recently there's been a reaction against NHS records being put online, and you can opt out, folks. By online, I mean within the database and available to professionals throughout the country. So I want to talk a bit about authority and authoritarianism. It seems that people in high places assume that there is some sort of greater moral worth in their values and pronouncements because they have the status, the power and the situation that they're in. And if you think about recent disclosures about undercover officers in the police service, co-op executives, the NHS in the mid-staffs, and the reaction to whistleblowers who often bullied, excluded in spite of legislation, the guy who was the risk manager at one of the big banks before it went under and got sacked because he did his job but didn't say things that were popular. And the cult of the charismatic leader, so people who are driven, the bully exclamation mark, and the myth that there is a shortage of talent and that exceptional people are able to, or should be able to, direct and control things rather against the will of others. And leaders need followers. And quite often today, very often I would argue, the odds are stacked against followers who wish to challenge leaders. So if you work in an organisation, if you're part of government, then it's probably best to follow the party line. And the party line can involve institutional capture, and that can be by the executive, it can be by staff, it can be by a particular clique or department. And then the organisation becomes all about itself rather than questioning its standards of service, the service it delivers, and it's all about maintaining the dominant culture and the status and power of the people who have captured the institution.
That's particularly so where the state has a quite legitimate reason to protect matters of security, where you've got secrets which need to be for the security of the state. Unfortunately, it gets washed over into securing the political party who happens to be in power against embarrassment. That should not. Political embarrassment needs to be brought out into the cold light of reality. I've got no problem against defending the secrets of the state. I still am subject to the Official Secrets Act, what I learned in the Navy about nuclear bombs and nuclear energy. So, but that is quite reasonable. But this political embarrassment crap is just not defensible.
And I would take it further and say that muddying of the lines between embarrassment, although we have a Freedom of Information Act, there has been no public debate about the extent of personal privacy and what the state can legitimately keep secret. So I know a chap who I served with in the police service, and he has a proper medal, and he was awarded his proper medal because he went undercover amongst some very dangerous people who, had they discovered who he was and what he was doing, would have dispatched him, probably very painfully and very nastily. And those sorts of things, quite understandably, need to be kept quiet, because his actions resulted in the convictions of people who were doing some very bad things. Yet then you see what happens when that culture then is influenced by individual values about, say, particular causes, and there isn't a debate, there isn't a public debate over what is and isn't really a threat to both the state and society, and that's all closed down. And institutions will endeavour to capture oversight bodies. Interview in The Guardian today, or a report of it, with Edward Snowden, and he pointed out that the systems and processes in the United States should have provided oversight, but actually the oversight bodies were more concerned about defending the people they had oversight of. I mentioned earlier Facebook, LinkedIn, Google, etc. And we surrender part of our privacy for the benefit. Actually, they benefit as well, because our privacy becomes profit, and we're all quite capable of working out whether or not we wish to surrender some part of ourselves so that others can make profit, and we get some sort of social benefit, or in the case of LinkedIn, a professional benefit. That's just a aside from me. And if you think about some of the scandals, so local government, its proposal to put microchips in wheelie bins to monitor people's usage. We are the most heavily CCTV'd country in the world, I believe, and you'll be delighted to know that you're no longer going to need a tax disc in the not too distant future. And whilst I can't say it with absolute certainty, I suspect it's because ANPR, automatic number plate recognition, is now on such a scale that they're confident that should your vehicle be on the road and untaxed, they will be able to detect it. And then we go on to the industrial scale vacuuming up of personal data, including your Yahoo Messenger sessions, which sounds pretty beyond the pale to me. Authoritarian leaders and followers. I recommend that you have a look at Bob Altemeyer's book, The Authoritarian Sector. There is a free version without all the data sets and so forth in it, and it's available for download on the internet. And John Dean, who was the White House counsel, who what's the word I'm looking for? Let's use the slang term. He dobbed in the Watergate burglars. He used Bob Altemeyer's research to underpin his own writings on why the Nixon regime and the people in it decided it was okay to commit crimes to maintain their place. Questions and alternate views are seen as threats. I mentioned that earlier. So a legitimate concern can be raised, and people are treated badly because of it. And so knowing a deep truth about individuals might be seen as useful in that context. Surveillance happens because the technology exists, rather than there having been an open and public discussion about there being a need for it. And here's the cynic in me, or the paranoid. Remember, if you've done nothing wrong, there is nothing to blackmail you with. There's something fundamental as somebody who considers liberty to be a valuable part of an open and democratic society. There is something fundamentally wrong when the state or private organisations are able to collect and manipulate data, to analyse it without the consent of people on such a scale. There will be occasions when it's necessary. As Edward Snowden pointed out, the recent shootings in Boston, and he gave another example, there was plenty of evidence that conventional police work would have shown, or would have established, that there was a threat to society. However, huge amounts of money were being spent on hoovering up data that really, actually, there's little value in doing it. If you want to catch people doing bad things, it can be done because it's done. And I kind of resent the fact that I can't be sure that my personal correspondence isn't being read by somebody because of my political beliefs. And when this goes up on YouTube, it could well be that I'm going to be in deep trouble. So if I don't see you all again.
Michael, pixelate the face, it's alright.
Yeah, you mentioned my name earlier. And I've got a distinctive voice as well.
Don't worry, they'll sort out for where you are.
Yeah.
They know where you live.
Yes, I know. I've probably got an orange jumpsuit in my size already.
So, obviously, a different talk to usual. We are going to relate this to your use online and stuff in a second. But in terms of that, in terms of Kane's introduction from a political side, big P, little p, are there any questions for Kane about anything he said? Or anyone want to give an alternative viewpoint? Or?
Surely all of this ever was thus. The only difference now is we have technology which allows a much greater collection of data, and that is the only difference.
It's volume, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's the interesting thing. It's because it is, you know, that middle bullet point there perhaps is the interesting one. You know, we're never going to. The thing is with us in our position, and I don't entirely agree with everything Kane's saying, but the thing is with us in our position, we're only going to be ever aware of the hits or the misses. Sorry, we're only going to be ever aware of when this fails and there is some kind of either a terrorist attack or some kind of incident that wasn't prevented because it wasn't picked up. We don't really know how many of these things have been prevented by the use of such technology. And that's an interesting, you know, I mean, we're never going to know, we're never going to be in that position, and certainly that's information that's not going to be released. In terms of the main issue being volume, well, yeah, of course, you have police officers that would wander around in the past and chat to people, and they would get their surveillance and get their information, you know, that way. Now the issue is because it's so prevalent, because it's in everything that we do, it means that everybody potentially is monitored in a way that they weren't in the past, and it depends on how comfortable you feel about that. Kane obviously has a position, and I have a slightly different position. I'm fairly, you know, if you've done something wrong, there's nothing to blackmail you with. I'm kind of feeling quite happy in that.
No, well, the problem with that is, what happens now, and it's happened to me for the last 22 years, you get set up. You see, the police are able to control a lot of what goes on there, and they can put information into this kind of collection, and it once it's in there, it's there. It's been collected, it's got to be true because it's there. And you try and prove it's not.
Yeah, that's always going to be difficult. It's the same as identity. You know, it's effectively identity theft but reversed, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, how often does that happen? How different is it from a policeman forging a statement in the past? Is it easier?
It's easier. It's a lot easier. And it's done institutionally.
But then this leaves a clear electronic trail. Any editing of things on I said clear electronic trail leaves some kind of electronic trail. Whereas a simple I'll sprinkle some gunpowder residue on your coat while you're in it is much more arguably much more difficult to
I thought
track.
it was dandruff.
Yes,
That's right.
So these things have, going back to your point, these things perhaps have always have existed. It's just scale and magnitude and how we react.
And it's much more easy to do it.
But it leaves a trail. You can't edit something without it having a record of
But you can put the information in.
Yeah, but it would have a record of being edited and who edited it. And that's the difference. That's one of the counter arguments against mass, counter arguments against that position, because everything is always recorded forever. Any change is recorded. Any series of changes are recorded. Whereas in the past, you could flip through a paper file and go, "Oh, look, here it is." You don't know when that piece of paper was put in.
That's how they caught that serial killer, the Doctor. What was his name? Shipman. That's how they caught Shipman, because he'd edited his own records in the computer.
And
there was a record of the editing, and they could see that it was sometime later.
Yeah, but I think
He'd lied.
that's a very simple situation.
Yeah, I mean, this is undoubtedly more potentially, a police officer editing your file to frame you up is very, I mean, that's an exceptionally serious. Needless to say,
It's not.
exceptionally
It goes
serious.
on all the time.
Does it?
Yes.
As a former policeman.
The police do
I need you guys to have a discussion about this.
It's part of what our friend there is saying. It's done because they have to preserve their own situation. They make one mistake and they just keep on covering up. And now all the cover-ups are covered up. So this just makes all that much easier.
Maybe.
Yes,
If
that's the reality.
Graham, it's worth thinking about the report that's come out in the last few days. Another one about the murder of Stephen Lawrence and the events.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a very bad example, and that supports your argument entirely. Yeah, I agree. But one bad apple doesn't make.
Oh, come on! I know you're only a youngster, but when I get to my age, young man, you'll change your mind.
It's basically.
You stood out there as a teacher dictating to us. Maybe there's some other foot this time.
There is undoubtedly some truth in what you say. But again, we're in a position of ignorance.
It was a good use of the word apple, though. In the current situation.
It's a spectrum of belief. The thing is, we're both arguing from a position of belief without any evidence.
Rubbish. I've got the evidence. My case is currently with the CPS.
So that's Yeah.
That doesn't mean the whole police force is corrupt, does it?
It does down here,
No, it doesn't.
doesn't it?
There's two
Um,
ex-police officers here, and I
before-
can assure
before
you
we
neither of
actually
us are
relate-
corrupt, and never have been.
Well, you
very
must be
much
one of the
resent
very
the
few
implication
in the
that we
force
were.
here that are not, because it's institutionally corrupt.
Let's keep it simple, guys.
My son-in-law
Allegedly.
was a police officer, my daughter is a police officer, and they are both been dedicated to tracking down paedophiles. Now, he designed the part of the national computer, the police national computer, to track paedophiles and to take information from police officers on the street. They were able to input information into the system. A guy was released from Pentonville prison. He was under control that he couldn't go into certain areas. Within 4 hours, he had been detected in this would be when the system went live. 4 hours. It had only been live 4 hours. This guy was arrested and was back in Pentonville jail within 6 hours because he had violated the terms of his parole. Now, that is a very useful use of the computers. I was on 7-7, I was on the train in front of the one where the people got their legs blown up. I was that close. And you've got to have a certain, it's a balance. You've got to track these people who have no concern for the welfare of people on trains or anywhere else. So you've got to track them, but it is a balance, and I'm a liberty person. I really do believe in Chakrabarti. She is a wonderful espouser of liberty, and I believe in that. But there is a balance, but it's this political influence that worries me. You know, they're spin doctors. They're absolute A1 bastards, and you know, they're always trying to get the politicians off the hook, and that's why we have the problems we do. I think there's got to be a little bit more openness about what they're doing, not so much necessarily what they are doing, but transparency. Transparency. We need a little bit more. An excellent talk, by the way. Thank you very much. Very thought-provoking.
So
if I can say just
Yeah, no,
one
please.
last thing, it was my intention to be a bit contentious. Maybe.
it's very unlike you.
But the crux of the matter for me is that actually there's been no open debate, no really deep open debate, so that society can, because people can be daft and bad, and they can do bad things, but also they can be very wise as well. And actually, shouldn't we all bear some sort of responsibility for deciding what sort of surveillance we are willing to be under in exchange for a degree of security? And people do make trade-offs. You think about it, we have 2,700, 2,800 people killed on the roads each year, and basically that's the negative side of us having the freedom to use motor vehicles, etc. And so society accepts that, and there hasn't been sort of a discussion, but over the years there have been improved road safety, and people generally go along with that. You know, they don't drink drive as much, and so forth. And as a society, I think that we should have a hand in shaping how we're protected, who does it, and the oversight that's there.
Snowden makes this point, and we're going to put Snowden on a pedestal, but you know, he effectively makes this point that there has been no debate. We've sleepwalked into a surveillance culture and a culture where nothing we do is really right. So I'm going to talk about some more practical hints and just general bits of advice about if you're concerned about this and you want to be a bit more private when you're online. What are the things that you can do? What are the things you might be aware of? Following on from Kane's talk, I think it's very. I think it's safe to assume that nothing you do online really is ever entirely private, and so I think you should always enter in that kind of doing whatever you're doing with that in mind. When you sign up for a free Gmail account or a free email account or whatever, you are giving them information about yourself. They, in return, provide you with services, useful services. maybe not Google Plus, but Gmail, Google Calendar, useful, good services that you get a significant benefit from. But the trade-off for that is, and you shouldn't be under any illusion, and I'm not here to bash Google, this is the same with most companies, as Game was saying, Facebook, LinkedIn, anything where you sign up that's a free sign-up, you are paying for that service, but not necessarily financially. You're paying for it with information about you. You know, companies like Google and Facebook make their money by selling information about you. You are their product. You get to use Facebook and you get to see the grandkids and kids and various bits and bobs in XYZ and see different stories are interesting. But the payment for that is that you have signed up with your information that is then a marketable information allowing companies to target ads at you which they're willing to pay for. Information about you is particularly valuable to advertisers. You know, if you've got a particular product and you know it sells to people that like A, B, C but not D, that information is vastly superior to just a general TV advert that hits everybody at once. It's a massive waste of money, TV adverts, in comparison, unless they're in between certain programmes. It's why, if you're ever watching football on ITV with the commentary turned off because it's just so bad. But you watch it and at half time it's all beer adverts. They know their audience. You're not going to see any My Little Pony adverts in between the 2 rounds of a football match. So it kind of already exists, but online I think it exists more. I think we should be very cautious of that.